Oh, thank you. I'm Randy MacDonald, and I work with Lisa and Grant VNA. I was originally Central New Hampshire VNA and Hospice. I'm up here in the Lakes region, and I am a veteran. Hey, Robert, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Glad to have you join.
I will apologize first for the background noise because I'm at the Veterans Center in Hooksett and couldn't get a room inside. So
All right.
sitting out on the front porch here.
Yeah. So I just introduced myself, and I'm a veteran, 4 years Coast Guard. What about yourself, Robert?
Army, 6 years, 65 through 71, Germany, Vietnam. Yeah, long time ago.
Many ways, but some ways not, huh?
Oh yeah, that some of it keeps creeping back. Yep, absolutely. I can basically say introduce myself because I'm with Home Health and Hospice in Merrimack. I'm a volunteer, and I've been focusing primarily on veterans. They're so good to let me know when a veteran has been accepted to the community hospice house or to a nursing home, and a nurse advises them that that's a veteran under our care. And so I will either do a vigil with them, or we have a We Honor Veterans program that I conduct. So I'm getting a lot of direct impact on veterans.
Are you able to work with them early enough to actually get a story or a sense of where they've been and what they've done?
Very good point. And I'm so sorry that Cindy was unable to continue her story about finding out after, unfortunately, her aunt, I think it was, died, and she was in the Navy and a code breaker. So often, family is unaware of much, if any, of their loved ones' veteran background or service background. They don't think to ask too often, or they're afraid to ask. And usually that's the only time it's going to be discussed or opened. The story is never going to be told unless somehow they're asked, or if they're encountering another veteran. Veterans seem to open up, as you know, so much better to other veterans because they share something. And it makes me very fortunate when I do the vigils and the patients articulate and able to talk to me. I hear stories that are amazing. And of course, having been in combat, there's nothing they can tell me that would shock me. And I make it clear, and that there's nothing I'm going to tell anyone else unless they want me to. But I'm at least able to gain enough information about their service to often inform the family. And then I'll get a lot of questions too often. What does it mean to be a specialist 5th class? What does it mean to be an ensign? How does that compare? What is that ship all about that he was on? Well, if I get fortunate enough to get some information in advance of the visit or the We Honor Veterans presentation, I will actually investigate it, get a picture of the ship if I can off of Wikipedia, a little history on it. It's amazing when they see it, they light up because they spent an important part of their lives on that boat. And I can't imagine, because I don't like, I would rather stay on land, but these guys, God bless them, what they had to go through. So I find that they open up when they feel it's comfortable, when it's safe, when they can talk about it. And the families gain so much more information that they never really could imagine about that service period. It may have only been 2 years in their lives, but it was an impressive 2 years. It made a major impression on them and stayed with them all their lives.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone else have any experience working with veterans or have stories along those lines?
Yeah, I guess I could add a little something to you if you want me to.
Okay, David. We'll get to you afterwards.
No, that's okay. Long story short, I am a veteran, if you will. I was a officer in the military, National Guard. Was thinking of making it a career until I met my lovely wife, and then decided that was more important than the Army, if you will. But experienced a lot of different things, not much combat, but that was okay. You know, I always had the motto, work smarter, not harder. And thank God I'm safe. You know, back in the Vietnam era, if you will, I didn't really get overseas, but that's great. That was fine with me. But, I just seen a lot of people, that I admire for doing the service that they did, and especially, that whether that be in the military, whether that be in my work. I am now retired, which was good. Retired from the Postal Service, helped an awful lot of people with their veterans checks. Got to know, the background and whatever, and, tried to help them along. And, I'm just very grateful knowing that I could work smarter and not harder and accomplish an awful lot of things. And just kind of praiseworthy that I'm glad that I rubbed elbows with an awful lot of different people, and that sort of have built me, if you will, on how to act, how to react, and how to mostly importantly listen. Is for me, that's, we always fail to listen. Or I'm going to cut in, I'm going to say something. Oh, I could drop that story. Yeah, it's just most people, most patients, most hospice clients, if you will, just need to listen, and just say, boy, I respect all the people that went overseas, and even now what we see on TV, which is really disastrous, all the different things that are happening. So I'm very grateful, and just saying, well, Lord, what do you have in store for me next? So I shared a lot of them. Yep. So that's my story. Thank you much, so.
Kathy?
Yeah, I've been a hospice volunteer, oh gosh, maybe 8 years or so. I'm also a VFW auxiliary past president. I've been with them since 2015. And I really wish that I had seen this a lot sooner, because my first hospice patient was there to liberate Auschwitz. And I didn't know it until his funeral. So this is going to be very, very important to me. Thank you.
David, you mentioned about not seeing much combat, but we didn't have much choice about that, didn't we? It's where
that's very true.
I did better on a test in electronics school that enabled me to avoid the last non-Vietnam billet, to be quite honest with you. I ended up in Attu, 342 miles from Siberia, but who knows? We all signed the check and some of us didn't get it cashed.
That's a very important point, if you don't mind mentioning that. When I do the honor ceremony, that's what I focus on. I focus on the fact that they served, that they stepped up. We all started the same way. We had no clue about what we were getting into. We have no idea where they're going to send us or what they're going to make us do. Some of us, like David, I was an officer as well, may have made that, you never know if it's a fortunate or unfortunate choice to become an officer. But the fact remains that that was about the only decision we made. And
yes,
they basically pointed us where they needed us. I was going to be a fixed station radio operator before I went to OCS. I'm so proud of every one of them that did their duty, that stepped up, and it didn't matter where they served. They could have been in a desk in the finance department in Indianapolis. It didn't matter. They took the initiative. They made the sacrifice. They left everything that was formal and familiar to them, going into a totally different world. And we all know what that meant, and so it didn't matter where you served or what you served, as it mattered more or less that you did. And they need to understand that and be absolutely aware of the fact we appreciate that. And that's all I focus on during these ceremonies. And it goes so far. I can see the relief many times in their eyes, the fact that we're making a big deal out of that. And that's very important. So I'm glad you brought that up, David. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
I think we can all see the importance of storytelling with veterans if they want to talk. And how
Absolutely.
that. Some do, some don't.
Mhm.
Have any of you ever had any other experiences with veterans? Any other walks of life, anytime?
I'll just share a little bit about my experiences. My name's Lisa Challenger. I'm one of the volunteer coordinators with Granite VNA. And I was a military spouse for over 25 years. When I was married, my husband served in the Navy on submarines and then in the National Guard, and was deployed over to Kuwait and all of that stuff. And so I guess I have a fondness for military families and the sacrifices that they make too. So I'm always looking, I shouldn't say looking, I'm always open to connections with family members that may be, have served as well. And so how do you support them as well? So that's another layer in addition to supporting the veterans themselves. But I wonder too, like in your experiences with working with veterans, how did you sort of balance the fact that they may or may not want to talk about it? And so, we all want to thank service members, for their service, but we as volunteers, we know that that's not always the case, that they want to talk about it. So have you ever had any experiences where you kind of were put in that situation, and how did you deal with that?
Usually I'll try and get the family, if we have the ability, to look for their DD-214. The DD-214 tells the story. It tells us where they served, if they served overseas, what their military occupation specialty might have been. It gives me grounds to begin discussion. If they served in Germany, I can start discussions about Germany that begin their openness. They will suddenly say, oh yeah, I was in Grafenberg, or I remember where that was and what I did there. And so it may start the conversation. Hopefully you find some common element there between you and them so that they begin to feel more comfortable in talking to you about it. It is difficult many times, and a lot of them are harboring a lot of ill feelings. They're harboring guilt. They're harboring a lot of guilt in both ways, whether it was in combat or not in combat. And some of them feel guilty that they weren't. And you want to open that up and ask them about, well, you say you were a radio operator. Tell me about it. Were you a radio operator mobile? Were you in a fixed station? Tell me about that. It's very intriguing. What did you do? Where were you? And suddenly they start getting a little pride. You can see it in them, in their eyes. And they're starting to talk about that accomplishment, because it was. And so absolutely many times difficult. So you look for whatever common point. You can look around the room sometimes where they're housed, and you might find a medal or a badge or something that you can find, hopefully, to draw some common interest in. It's not easy.
I'd like to add a little bit to that as well. I agree with you a lot on what you just said. But I have found, if you will, that I cannot top your story, nor do I want to try to top your story. But what I can do is I can listen, but more importantly, I could compliment. To me, that's really a big thing, to compliment. War is hell. We all know that, but who's to say that one war was worse than another? If you're disabled or not, you came home alive, maybe not with all your parts, if you will, but to give to someone the respect and saying, I tip my hat to you for doing that. Wow, what a brave thing to do. It's just to give a compliment. It goes a long, long way. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just like, oh yeah, sure. Well, blah, 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 blah. But it's just, we need to listen. Very hard to do without interrupting and saying, well, a lot of people, I know, sort of, thank you for your service. It's just more of a good thing to say, well, I'm really proud of what you've done. Even if you were just a cook rather than being on the front line, you served, period. You know what I mean? Just a compliment. People need to hear that. That's all I have to say.
I find when I work with our veterans in hospice with the We Honor Veteran program, a lot of times they're just as interested in where you've been and what you've done.
Yeah.
It becomes a two-way conversation. Even though you don't want to cut in, they ask questions.
I would like to share a story that happened to me recently, personally, but so I went to the air show over at Pease recently when it was here, and I was with a friend who is disabled, and he was in a scooter. And so we were, we got to the line, and of course, if anybody's ever been to those things, the lines are really long. They're, and it was a hot day. And so this gentleman in uniform came over to my friend and very discreetly said, come on over with me. I'll help you we'll take the quick way or whatever. And so very discreetly, not drawing attention to him at all, he moved us through the line and we went to the front and we quickly went through the check of our bags and things like that. And when we got through, he just was so touched by that because it was just a subtle way of sort of thanking him for his service and welcoming him home because he did serve in Vietnam. And when he retells that story, like it seems like such a small thing to us who, but to him, this was such a gift in recognition of who he was and where he served that he just really gets choked up about it all the time, telling the story. And so that was a really eye-opening thing for me when to be a witness to that.
Yeah, and especially since you brought up earlier about families and how oftentimes they're not remembered or they're not acknowledged. And I had a couple, World War II couple, really delightful. We ended up talking for hours, and she did most of the talking. She was a war bride. She was married to him when she was 19 years old. He was served on the USS Benevolent, which was a hospital ship that shuttled back and forth between Japan and Hawaii. And she told stories that were just fantastic and amazing. And she was glowing. And he would just sit there in his wheelchair and he just would glow while she spoke about them. And I kept encouraging her because my parents were World War II, and it's you wish you had asked them more about it before they passed. These are stories that are amazing and should be told. And her daughter was sitting there and listening to this too, and she was surprised at some of what was discussed. They really are invaluable. They're gems. And so families involvement, it's overlooked too often, and what they went through, whether their husbands were in the service or wives were in the service. Amazing stories. They should be told.
I grew up watching my dad come and go in uniform. He was Korea, World War II, and then Navy Reserve and Merchant Marines. Thanks God he was able to switch back and forth and get his benefits. Now, speaking of the military family, and I had a neat thing, a vet, a war dog, Marine, who passed away, who I'd been working with, and I got a panic call from the daughter. We don't have his dress belt. He wants to be buried in his dress uniform. And it only took one call to a recruiter in Concord, and he came up within the hour and brought a belt for the man.
Wow.
That's nice.
You know what is remarkable
Wonderful.
as well is the fact that the VFW and the American Legion participate, and if the parents or the family, I'm sorry, of the deceased, knowing he's a veteran, mention it by law, the military is required to provide at least 2 military personnel to perform a military funeral, and it's not overly done, but American flag on the casket, acknowledgement and salute, taps played if they have someone. I found the American Legion will bring out all their people many times to perform a ceremony, no matter where they served or how they served or what their rank was, doesn't matter. We've made some really great impressions on families who never took it that seriously until boom, they see So many guys decorated that stand there and tribute to this soldier. It's wonderful for the families. Absolutely.
Let them know about the veteran cemeteries too.
Yes. Yes. Good
When I
point.
was doing my internship up at the Veterans Home in Tilton, I remember there was a resident there, a serviceman that died, and he didn't have any family. No one was going to his funeral. So I had the honor of going with my supervisor, and we were the only people at this funeral. And it was a really humbling thing. And I'll never forget that experience of showing up like we all do as hospice volunteers, right? Or sometimes when there's no one to sit with a patient at end of life for various reasons, you all show up and hold that space for them. So I'm just wondering, Sally or Barb, do you have anything that you would like to share? Certainly no pressure, but I just want to give you the opportunity to share. Sally, I see.
Yep, I'm a Army veteran's wife. I'm very proud of it. And I have also witnessed several of the We Honor Veterans services in the hospice house. I'm by Bob, and then before COVID, actually one of the nurses there is a veteran, so she conducts a few. And before COVID, the other volunteers who ran the We Honor Veterans ceremonies, and I find them tremendously rewarding, which is a funny word to use, I guess, but to see the family members there, to hear the questions asked by the member of the service or whoever is running the ceremony. And one time in particular, I do patient screening, and 3 people came in at once, and it was when we were only allowing 2 visitors at a time last year. But the I have to get this right. The husband was the patient. He was outranked by his wife, who also served, also outranked by the best friend who came. And the friend sat in the lobby while the wife and daughter went in with the patient, and she shared so much with me about the veteran. And it was just, as I say, it was rewarding to be allowed into that part of their story. And I know pretty intimately everything my husband has done in his military career. He had 30 years total, and was an officer in the Army. And obviously I trekked around places around the world with him, except for Vietnam. But that was during the days of no internet communication, no cell phones. So I have all his letters and, all of that. So he wrote a lot of things in his letters, which is wonderful, because otherwise it's never written.
Mhm.
Typically.
Thank you.
Writing skills improved immensely when I was in the military.
Barb, did you want to add something? Sorry.
Yeah, one of the very first respites I did was I believe, World War II vet. And I wish I had known what Robert was saying, because he said I was only a cook. It's like, and I didn't know what to say to him, and I might now know after hearing Robert.
Mhm.
That's it.
Did he tell you what branch was he in, Barbara? Do you remember?
Honestly, I don't remember, and I never really talked to him about it. But listening to this, get a better idea of talking to people and dragging it out of them.
Yeah,
And he had dementia, so I didn't know how much he would remember, but I'm sure he did remember, if I had just asked him. But
well, I'd like to say, Barbara, that you don't know what you don't know. So, and it's good to have Robert here. Now, like at my VNA, Cornerstone VNA in Rochester, they try to hook up veterans with veterans, which kind of leaves me out because I do know a lot of things about the VFW and the cemetery and so forth. So there's a lot of things that we really need to share with each other.
Yeah.
And then we can know what we know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you, Robert.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had to step away. I just got another assignment. So they're coming fast and furious now, which is good because the nurses and are telling the families that we do this, and families are jumping on it. So we're going to need to recruit some more veterans.
Yeah.
That could be a subject of a whole nother breakout room. How do we do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Robert, are you mainly
one-
via right now with the clients you're talking to?
I'm sorry.
Robert, are you mainly with Vietnam veterans now?
The vet center here was originally designed for Vietnam veterans, but we have veterans now from the Afghanistan war. We have them from the Iraqi war. We have them for peacetime periods or whatever. The focus here is a lot on counseling, especially through PTSD issues, but just in the camaraderie, the ability to come and talk with one another, share stories here, and it's remarkable how many different points of view and stories you get. So yeah, I am today. We meet every Wednesday morning, but I don't do that much more other than the hospice ceremonies and or vigils. Otherwise, I don't think my wife would let me. So,
Robert, do you work with Joe Drinan by any chance?
name's not familiar. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, because I was just trying to figure out if there was a connection there.
There are a lot here. A lot come
Yeah.
through here, and it's a wonderful place. It's a respite for veterans to come and be around their own kind, if you will. But it's a very comfortable and warm environment, which was definitely needed for a long time, especially for the Vietnam veterans who obviously didn't have quite the welcome that they were expecting.
I would like to just say also that because I've been with the VFW for quite a while, it's Veterans of Foreign War. So in order to join, you needed to be in a foreign war. And there's a lot of camaraderie there, an awful lot. And I do know that the Veteran Cemetery, if they have somebody that has nobody, they put a bulletin out to us, and then we put people out and put messages out to other people. Now, I do know, I'm going to shamelessly let you know about next Wednesday, there's going to be a meet and greet at the Senior Center, the new one in Portsmouth, for their VFW is now going to form an auxiliary. So if anybody wants to come in and know about it, especially the combat veterans, because that's where you really hook up with other people. And there's so many things that the VFW can do to help veterans in their service work, whatever needs to be done. All you have to do is contact, and whether you remember or not, contact the VFW, your local one, or if anybody wants to get to me and I can put a word out. But that's the most important thing, like Robert said, is to talk to somebody that knows that they've been there, they've done that, and they can relate to each other. And that does bring the story out.
I'll tell you, the VFW bar in Merrimack has a great bar too.
Yes, it does. I know that.
I've been there before, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Bob, you shared with us on a volunteer call a month or so ago about I think you call it the shadow box.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and
I'm working.
in compiling that, you know, through the records on the DD 214,
Right.
a lot of stories can be gathered.
Good point. Yeah, very good point. I know we got about 56 seconds. Yeah, the shadow box is found at most hobby stores, but it can display any number of things. And my family honored me unexpectedly because most of us just keep whatever memorabilia we had, you know, everything from awards to your rank and patches of units you served in a box. They managed to get it out. They managed to get some help in identifying how their precedences were, and they put them in this shadow box and displayed it for me. I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of them for doing that. And so we're going to spread that intelligence around as much as we can to folks in home health and hospice to teach them how to do that sort of thing.
Good.
And I've got